Listen, there's one simple fact you need to accept right now. The universe is communicating with you in ways most people never learn to notice. This is not mystical fluff. It's a steady, intelligible current of information tuned to your life, your history, your readiness. And the message you're receiving in this moment is unique. It won't arrive again in exactly this form. If you've come to this paragraph, if you're present and paying attention, treat what you're getting as precise, tailored, and urgent. You've felt this before. It's not a thunderclap or a dramatic vision. It's a low-frequency vibration under your ribs, a persistent, quiet tone that hums when everything else is busy or distracted. Sometimes it's barely a whisper. Other nights it fills the room so loudly you can almost reach for it, an echo of all the alternatives your life could have taken. Those paths that never solidified into your reality are not erased. They exist like faint corridors at the periphery of your awareness, suggestions of other outcomes, other selves. They don't scream or demand. They simply wait, like witnesses who remember what you once considered. Here's the part people almost never grasp. Those unlived versions of your life are not grieving the fact that you didn't choose them. They're not resentful or bitter. Instead, they observe with a kind of compassionate understanding. They register the choices you made, the burdens you bore, the nights you lay awake and worried you'd ruined everything. They know when you misread protection for sabotage. They recognize that some exits you took were not errors but survival strategies. That choice to step away, often judged by others, sometimes shielded you from a worse collapse disguised as opportunity. In many cases, the wrong turn was actually a preservation of something deep and irreplaceable, your capacity to keep becoming. So do something radical and straightforward. Forgive the you who couldn't have known what you know now. Forgive the version that picked safety over a glamorous promise. Forgive the person who said no, because every yes around them felt like handing away their heart. Forgive the one who remained because leaving would have wrecked more than it fixed. You made those moves with the light you had at the time. That light, imperfect, dim at moments, inconsistent, was enough, more than enough. Timing is rarely explained clearly. Nobody tells you that you aren't late just because someone else's calendar shows progress you don't yet recognize. You haven't missed a universal deadline. You have been developing in the dark places, the slow interior work no one applauds. Think of yourself like a celestial body forming beneath dust and shadow, gathering mass in silence before it ever glows. Every hesitation, every detour, every time you paused while others sprinted, that was not failure. It was listening. You were sensitive to a frequency most people ignore, and that sensitivity guided you away from certain harms and toward the kind of growth that needs time to stabilize. This is where it becomes useful to rethink who you are. The versions of you that never fully emerged aren't separate or lost. They're woven into the person you are now. They left fingerprints on your posture, your tolerance, your instincts. The decisions you didn't make and the routes you bypassed shaped the frequency you now broadcast into the world. Imagine the you who survived everything you endured. The field, call it life, call it reality, call it whatever makes sense, recognizes that signature. There is a kind of gravitational respect built into the fabric of existence for someone who has walked through pain and kept their essence intact. If you could see yourself from that perspective, you'd notice how rooms subtly change when you enter them. Not because of ego or theatrics, but because reality pauses, responds, and adjusts to a person who has integrated hardship. Mistakes, rough edges, and incomplete chapters are not shameful residues. They are the places where light can slip through. Perfection blocks light, cracks let it in. The unfinished parts of your life have luminosity. They can glow with meaning if you stop treating them like evidence of failure. Right now, you are in an alignment. Life moves in cycles, patterns, and waves, not straight lines. Opportunities rise and fall like tides. You are passing through a portal, a moment where timing and readiness intersect. The half-remembered paths you didn't take aren't haunting you. They stand by respectfully, acknowledging the cost it took to become the person who made it this far. They watch with gratitude, not accusation. If this resonates, if something in your chest responds, do a small practical thing. If this appears as a video or a broadcast, press like, subscribe, stay connected. This isn't about ratings. It's about tending a frequency that supports deeper work. Staying in touch with similar transmissions keeps the signal strong. When those old possibilities surface, don't shove them down. Let them come. Let them stand in the room with you while you take inventory of what's left, what you've built from the fragments. Notice how much of your present has been cobbled from the ruins of plans that dissolved and from the fertilizer of disappointment. When those ghosts, those potential lives have seen what you did with the wreckage, let them step back. Acknowledge them, then return to your present with the dignity of someone who has been through the overhaul and still stands. Then lift your face not to apologize for the roads you bypassed, not to mourn missed versions of yourself, but to recognize the simple fact that you arrived. Against doubt, against empty rooms where belief should have been, against 100 near abandonments, you persisted. That's not small, it's essential. Your survival and arrival are everything. Here's an important idea worth taking seriously. Possibilities exist until someone gives them meaning. In the language of modern physics, every particle can be in many states until observed. Your past, all those what-ifs, is similar. They're a superposition of possibilities. When you regard them with compassion and gratitude, when you observe them without shame or defensiveness, something rearranges. The lens through which you view what happened collapses the range of meaning into a new configuration. You're not changing facts, you're changing the meaning those facts hold in your life. That shift is powerful because your perception affects the environment around you. The observer influences the observed. You were raised on a misleading story. Growth is linear and predictable, it isn't. Development spirals. You loop around the same lessons, return to old wounds, and every cycle brings you to a higher vantage point. A failure that felt catastrophic at first can reveal itself later as intense preparation. An ending can turn into a more fertile beginning once you see it from distance and perspective. Most people judge themselves by someone else's timeline. They compare their chapter 7 to someone else's chapter 20 and feel behind. But there is no universal schedule for your growth. Your life is governed by rules only your soul fully understands. So pause, breathe, feel grounded. You are not late, not lost, not insufficient. You're positioned to receive what's next because you needed everything that led here. The detours, the setbacks, the times you thought you had derailed were calibrations. They tuned you to a frequency able to hold a new reality. This is more than poetic speak. It's a practical observation. You are now capable of carrying outcomes your earlier self could not have handled. That is why some things take time. Understand, too, that consciousness participates in reality. It doesn't just passively receive events, it contributes to their construction. When you alter how you relate to your past, when you stop resisting and instead integrate its lessons, the immediately perceptible world adjusts. The probability fields that shape what's possible shift. You step, in effect, into a different timeline. But this requires an active choice. You must be willing to release the version of yourself anchored to regret, the identity that cherishes lack as a twisted form of loyalty. Holding on to those narratives energetically binds you. If you broadcast a frequency of scarcity and absence, the world will return experiences that match that frequency. The circuit completes. This is the threshold. To move through it, you must grieve the future you thought you were building and, at the same time, fall in love with the actual one emerging. Allow the ghost lives to watch you transform, then send them back into possibility with thanks. Not because those paths were wrong, they might have been rich and beautiful, but because the trajectory you're on now is real. Reality contains wisdom beyond your plans. When you stop fighting reality and lean into the intelligence operating through your life, new openings appear. Ask this plainly: what if every hesitation you experienced was precisely timed? What if doors that closed did so to protect you from rooms that would have stunted you? What if the universe, not as a benevolent force but as a practical, working intelligence, conspired to keep you on the track you're on because it knew you weren't ready for something else? Consider the possibility that unseen forces, patterns, and the accumulation of small choices have been aligning circumstances for you. What I'm inviting you into is not naive optimism. I'm not asking you to gloss over suffering or pretend everything was fine. This is about a reorientation, a recalibration of how you interpret events so that your energy and attention become tools for creating a different present. You don't ignore the pain, you translate it. You don't deny the loss, You fold it into the architecture of your resilience. That is how the future changes. Practical steps matter. You can't just say a mantra and expect everything to rearrange itself. Transformative work requires clear, consistent action combined with an internal reframe. Start by cataloging what you learned from each detour. Write down the hard lessons and the skills you acquired. Patience, discernment, how to recognize disguised risk, how to conserve your resources. Name the specific ways you were steered away from harm. Not as comfort, but as evidence. Build a ledger of competence. This ledger becomes an engine for confidence because it shows how the pieces you once thought were losses are actually assets. Next, choose which stories you're going to tell about your life. Storytelling is not trivial. The narratives you repeat to yourself and to others shape your expectations and your physiology. Replace narratives that center failure with accounts that emphasize learning and the strategic avoidance of harm. When you rehearse the version of events that highlights your agency and your wisdom, you rewire how you approach new choices. This doesn't mean lying. It means selecting the interpretation that empowers you instead of immobilizing you. Then, practice gratitude for the paths you didn't take. Again, this isn't sugarcoating sorrow. It's simple logic. If those roads were real possibilities, they taught you through absence as much as presence. Gratitude for unlived options frees you from the energetic tether of regret. It's like finally unclasping a heavy chain you've been dragging. When you let it go, you accelerate. Also, allow others to witness your evolution. You don't have to parade your progress, but find quiet witnesses, friends, mentors, or a community who reflect back the truths you're trying to embody. When your inner reframing is mirrored by external relationships, it becomes socially anchored, and social anchors stabilize change. If the medium is a channel or community where people resonate with the frequency you seek, engage, contribute, receive. This is not about popularity, it's about creating feedback loops that support growth. Expect resistance. You will encounter internal critics, old identities clinging to familiar narratives. You will meet external skeptics who prefer the predictable you. Recognize them for what they are, inertia and fear disguised as realism. Push gently, persistently, and with generosity toward yourself. The old identities are not evil. They're attempts to keep continuity. But continuity and growth are sometimes mutually exclusive. Choose growth when the choice is clear. One more thing, be bold in how you inhabit your presence. If you've been standing small because you feared invitations that would have required you to perform an earlier, less developed version of yourself, own this. You're not obligated to shrink to make others comfortable. The person who stayed, who waited, who evolved in silence, that person deserves space to expand now. Let your posture change. Let your voice carry further. This is not about arrogance, it's about integrity. It's the simplest, most direct form of honoring the work you've done. Now, tie this to a concrete habit. Every morning, do a 5-minute inventory of what your past prepared you to handle today. Keep it specific. Don't say, "I'm prepared." List the small, real competencies you now possess because of those detours. Maybe you can confidently handle confrontation. Maybe you can sit with financial uncertainty without panic. Maybe you can make decisions without needing every external validation. Whatever the skills are, name them. Over time, this daily accounting rewires your nervous system to operate from capacity instead of scarcity. And when you make choices going forward, test them against a new standard. Will this option demand the surrender of my integrity, my health, or my core growth? If yes, refuse. If no, proceed. Your past is not a prison. It's the filter that teaches you which doors to walk through without losing yourself. Remember the physics metaphor. The act of observation collapses possibility into reality. Your attention, your interpretation, your emotional stance. These are the coordinates that select which potential becomes actual. You don't need to forever haunted by what might have been. You need to become the observer who sees with compassion, gratitude, and clarity. Then watch how the world responds. Finally, be patient with the work. Transformation is cumulative. It's made of thousands of small, consistent acts and a handful of decisive ones. It's also about symbols. A change in wardrobe may feel childish, but sometimes an external shift signals an internal one and helps your social environment treat you differently. Consider rituals that mark the passage, a small ceremony, a letter to your former self that you burn or tuck away, a physical reorganization of your living space that mirrors an inner reorganization. These acts are not magical by themselves, but they anchor intentions in the real world. So here's the unvarnished truth. You were never late to your own life. You were always developing in the dark, reorganizing at a molecular level, building capacity. The unlived versions of you are not indictments. They are testimonies, companions that witnessed your becoming. Forgive the parts of you that made survival the priority. Release the identity of regret. Reinterpret the past as a teacher, not a jailer. Then take clear, practical action to lock those new meanings into your daily routine. This is not a pep talk. It's a strategy for reconditioning your relationship with time, choice, and consequence. Treat it like a project. Audit, reframe, practice, engage community, repeat. Keep asking the practical questions. What skills did that hardship develop? What doors did I close that protected me? Which stories do I want to carry forward? How do I anchor new meanings so my behavior follows? When you do this, the universe, not as a whimsical narrator, but as a responsive system, will answer in kind. Opportunities will align to the frequency you now emit. The environment will conspire, in only the most literal sense, to fit the shape of the person you have become. Not because you are special, but because you are now a different kind of instrument, tuned, sturdy, and ready. And if this phrase lands hard in you, if you feel it in your ribs and not just your head, connect wherever you can. Stay around transmissions like this. They are scaffolding. They remind you of the logic you're trying to adopt. The past is data, not destiny. Timing is personal, not universal. And the meaning you choose determines the reality you inhabit. I honor every path I didn't take, not as a casual comment, not as a way to engage with content, but as an energetic declaration, as a signal sent to the field itself, as a conscious interruption in the old loop. To recognize that the field itself is responsive, that consciousness and matter are in constant dialogue, and to understand that you, right here, right now, hold far greater agency than you may have been taught to believe, is to open a new dimension of being. The unchosen paths are not failures. They're the negative space that gives definition to the masterpiece you're creating, like the silence between notes that makes the music meaningful. When you hold them with that level of awareness, when you see your entire journey as a coherent whole rather than a collection of mistakes punctuated by occasional successes, something extraordinary happens. You stop living in reaction to your past and begin living in alignment with your true potential. Now, I invite you not merely to understand this conceptually, but to embody it. Let this truth land in your nervous system, in your cells, in the quantum field that you are made of, and that you endlessly broadcast into. So pause for a moment and make this statement real. I honor every path I didn't take. Write it, speak it. Feel it not as a fleeting thought, but as an energetic decree. Because when you speak something into existence, when you claim it in community, you're not just thinking it, you're making it real. You're collapsing the wave function. You're selecting which version of reality you will step into. Here's what happens when you do this. When you declare something with clear intention, when you give language to the shift that has been happening beneath the surface, you trigger what quantum physics calls the observer effect. You bring the invisible into form. You take the unconscious and make it conscious. In that act of observation, in that moment of witnessing, everything reorganizes. Neural pathways in your brain begin to fire in new patterns. The electromagnetic field around your heart begins broadcasting a different signal, and the universe, which is always listening and always responsive, begins reflecting back a reality that matches this new frequency. This is not metaphor, this is mechanics. This is how transformation actually works at the quantum level. You don't change by just trying harder to be different. You change by witnessing what is, by accepting what was, and by declaring what is emerging. Then reality shifts to accommodate that coherence. Take a moment and reflect. What is one path you walked away from that you now see was protecting you? What ghost are you ready to thank and release? Your words create ripples in the field, and sharing this might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. You may have spent long believing there was something wrong with you, that your journey should have looked different, carrying shame for choices made or unmade. But what if I told you that shame is nothing but unreleased energy? That it is simply the friction between who you were and who you are becoming? And that the moment you give yourself permission to honor the full scope of your path, that energy transforms. It becomes power, presence, the exact fuel you need for what's next. Let that sink in. Breathe into it. Feel where it touches something in your body. Because this is the kind of knowing that doesn't come from your mind. It comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere that's been waiting for you to remember. Somewhere that always knew you weren't broken, just breaking open. If these words resonate with you, if something in them is touching a frequency you've been searching for, then I invite you to subscribe not just to this channel, but to this entire space, this conversation, this movement toward a more conscious relationship with reality. Because what we're doing here isn't about consuming content. It's about joining a field of people who understand transformation is possible, that consciousness is the primary technology, that we're not victims of circumstance but active participants in the creation of our experience. And the more of us who hold this frequency, the more the collective field begins to shift, the more permission we give others to step into their own becoming. And here's another truth about timing the universe wants you to understand. This moment right now you're receiving this transmission in this exact form is not random. The algorithm didn't inadvertently deliver it. The field doesn't make mistakes. You've been preparing for this. All those nights of questioning everything. All those moments when you nearly gave up. All the times you felt utterly alone in your confusion, they were building your capacity to hold what I'm about to tell you. You are not here to live a small life. You never were. But the bigness you're meant for isn't about external achievement. It's not about accumulation or recognition or proving something to people who never understood you in the first place. The expansion you're being called into is internal. It's about the depth of presence you can hold, the volume of reality you can metabolize without shutting down, the degree of truth you can embody without apologizing for it. And to step into that level of being, you must release the version of yourself that's still trying to earn worthiness, the one that believes you're only valuable when you're producing, that thinks love is something you've got to deserve. That version served you, it got you here, but it cannot take you where you're going. Because where you're going requires you to know, not believe, not hope, but know at a cellular level that you are already whole. Let me share something that shifts the entire paradigm. Most people walk around with a fundamental misunderstanding of how reality works. They think the external world is solid, fixed, unchangeable, that what happened yesterday determines what's possible today, that their past mistakes have somehow locked them into a predetermined future. But quantum physics reveals something radically different, something that changes everything when you truly let it sink in. At the subatomic level, particles don't exist in one place. They exist everywhere and nowhere. Simultaneously, they are waves of probability until they are observed. And it is the act of observation consciousness itself that collapses that wave into a specific location, a particular outcome. This isn't philosophy. This isn't spirituality trying to sound scientific. This is documented, repeatable, observable reality. Consciousness literally shapes what manifests. Now apply that to your life, to your past, to those ghosts we've been talking about. Every memory you have, every story you tell yourself about what happened and what it means you're observing it right now. And in that observation, you're collapsing it into a specific meaning. You're choosing which version of that past becomes real in the present moment, the past that limits you or the past that prepared you, the history that proves you're broken or the journey that confirms you're unbreakable. Same events, different observation, different reality. This is where your power lives, not in changing what happened, but in transforming your relationship to what happened. In rewriting the story not by denying the facts, but by shifting the frequency of meaning you assign to those facts. And when that frequency changes, when you begin observing your history through the lens of wisdom instead of wounds, the quantum field responds. It must, because consciousness and reality are not separate, they are entangled. They are in constant co-creation. I want you to feel this in your body right now. Think of something from your past that you've been carrying as evidence of your unworthiness, a failure, a rejection, a moment when you fell short. Hold it in your awareness. And now, instead of seeing it as proof of what's wrong with you, what if you observed it as the very catalyst that cracked you open enough to let new light in? What if that moment wasn't your downfall, but your initiation? What if the universe was actually protecting you by closing that door, by removing that person, by dismantling that plan? Can you feel the shift? That's not just a mental reframe, that's a frequency change. That's the electromagnetic field around your heart literally reorganizing. That's your nervous system moving from a stress response into coherence. And when you're in coherence, when your heart and brain are synchronized, you become a powerful transmitter. You begin broadcasting a signal that the universe cannot help but respond to. This is the paradox that dissolves when you understand quantum consciousness. You're complete and you're evolving. You're perfect and you're transforming. You're already everything and you're still becoming. So let these words sink deeply into your being. Let them stir something ancient and wise inside you that may have been silent for too long. Honor the paths you didn't take. Feel them. Love them, thank them, because they gave you shape, they gave you contrast, they made you, and they continue to make you just as much as the paths you did walk. You are not defined by the roads taken alone, but by the totality of your becoming. In this moment you have choice, not just in the tangible choices you make, but in the choice of how you observe, how you interpret, how you allow your story to unfold. Remember, the field is responsive. Matter and consciousness are in conversation, and you are more potent, more engaged, more powerful than you've ever been told. Embrace that, embody that, live that. Because you are not waiting for your life to begin, you are living your life in this very moment. And every unchosen path, every abandoned dream, every no you accepted, every door that closed, they are all part of your masterpiece. I honor every path I didn't take. And in that honoring, I reclaim my agency. I reclaim my whole self. I reclaim the motion of becoming, and so do you. Both are true simultaneously, and the moment you try to choose one over the other, you collapse into limitation. But when you can hold both truths at once, when you can exist in that dynamic space of wholeness, you begin to experience life as it truly is. An endless unfolding of creation where miracles are not exceptions, but the natural expression of alignment. This state of awareness isn't about fantasy or blind optimism. It's about living in resonance with the fundamental structure of reality itself, a structure that responds to your consciousness in every moment. When you reach this understanding that consciousness literally shapes the quantum field, you begin to sense that this is only the surface of something far deeper, something vast and alive within and around you. If this transmission is landing in you, if you're feeling that subtle yet unmistakable pull to understand the full architecture of frequency, how you move from unconsciously broadcasting energy to becoming the signal itself, then know that you're already participating in that shift. You are no longer an observer standing at the edge of your own becoming. You are the field in motion, rediscovering its coherence. Think for a moment about water. Water doesn't try to be water. It doesn't struggle to flow. It doesn't apologize for taking the shape of whatever container it finds itself in. It simply responds to the laws of its own nature. And through that effortless obedience to itself, it carves canyons, nourishes forests, becomes vapor, cloud and rain. It is one substance in infinite forms, constant, adaptive, unstoppable. You are like that. Your essence does not change, but your expression does. Your being is the same. Yet your form is always evolving, always reorganizing itself in response to what life calls forth. The more you resist that natural evolution, the more friction you create. The more you cling to a version of yourself that's already dissolving, the more you generate suffering. But the moment you surrender to your own nature, when you trust the intelligence moving through you, everything begins to ease. Life doesn't suddenly become free of challenge, but you stop being at war with your own unfolding. The same river that once felt like it was dragging you now becomes the current that carries you home. When you fight your evolution, you create what quantum mechanics calls destructive interference, two waves meeting and cancelling each other out. One wave is who you think you're supposed to be, The other is who you are naturally becoming. In that collision, energy collapses into stagnation, paralysis sets in. You feel stuck not because you're broken, but because you're broadcasting conflicting frequencies. You're saying yes with your words, but no with your energy. You're taking steps forward while your consciousness grips the past. The universe cannot translate mixed signals. It cannot deliver clarity when you're broadcasting confusion. It cannot mirror abundance when your vibration is rooted in lack. Not because it punishes you, but because it is a perfect mirror. It reflects what you are emitting. When your frequency is contradiction, your reality becomes fragmented, uncertain, divided against itself. But when your inner and outer signals align, when your vibration matches your intention, everything reorganizes into coherence. That's the essence of constructive interference. When two waves align, when they synchronize in frequency and phase, they amplify one another. The result is a greater wave, stronger, clearer, more powerful than either alone. That's what happens when you stop resisting your evolution. When who you think you should be merges with who you truly are, your energy becomes focused, your intention becomes potent, and reality begins to move differently. Doors that once seemed stuck swing open. Opportunities begin to appear as if from nowhere. People who match your new vibration start arriving in your life not as miracles, but as natural outcomes of resonance. You didn't force it. You became coherent. And coherence is magnetic. So many of us waste our energy fighting battles that never needed to be fought, forcing outcomes, manipulating timelines, trying to control what was never ours to control. In that struggle, we block the very thing we're trying to create. True manifestation is not about imposing will upon reality. It's about aligning your frequency with what's already trying to emerge through you. The universe has been communicating this to you all along through synchronicities, through gentle nudges, through the quiet voice of intuition that speaks between your thoughts. Those flashes of clarity, those coincidences that seem too precise to ignore, they are confirmations. They are the field's way of saying, yes, this way, you're on track. Every delay was not a denial. Every redirection was divine timing, and every challenge that appeared insurmountable was an initiation, a preparation for the frequency you are now capable of holding. The key is to treat those signals as real, not as nice coincidences or comforting stories, but as actual evidence of an intelligent universe responding to your consciousness. Because every time you dismiss a synchronicity, every time you rationalize magic away, you train yourself to be deaf to the very guidance you've been asking for. There's a principle that ancient mystics understood long before modern science began to measure it, the principle of resonance. If you place two tuning forks in the same room and strike one, the other begins to vibrate at the same frequency. They resonate through the invisible field that connects them. You are like that tuning fork. Your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs generate a frequency. The universe, full of countless other tuning forks, people, opportunities, events, responds to you through resonance. When you vibrate fear, you attract experiences that confirm fear. When you vibrate unworthiness, you magnetize situations that reinforce that story, not as punishment, but as resonance. Like attracts like, always. But the extraordinary truth is this: you can change your frequency in an instant. You don't have to wait for the external world to change first. You don't have to earn it. You simply make a choice, a clear, conscious decision to stop resonating with your old story and begin attuning to the frequency of who you are becoming. It might sound too simple, it might even sound naive. We're conditioned to believe transformation must be hard, that it demands endless struggle and years of work. And yes, deep healing has its place. But there's another layer, a moment of recognition when you realize you've been choosing the frequency of limitation while the frequency of expansion has been available all along. And in that instant of awareness, everything changes. Because awareness itself is frequency. This very transmission, the words you're reading, is not just information, it's a signal. It carries a resonance pattern that invites you to match it, to sync with it, to let your old vibration dissolve as you tune to a new possibility. If you've made it this far, if you're still here, it's because some part of you is already in training to this higher frequency. You're already remembering what coherence feels like, what it means to live aligned with your own truth. The universe offers these moments only once, not because it withholds them, but because you are never the same twice. You are a fluid field of consciousness, and each configuration of your awareness receives its own calibration of truth. The message you're receiving now is perfectly attuned to who you are and what you're ready to embody at this precise moment. Tomorrow you'll be different. Yesterday you were another version entirely. But right now you are tuned to this exact vibration, and that makes it sacred. So if there's any part of you that's been waiting for permission, for proof, for validation that you're not crazy to believe there's more, this is it. This is your sign. But you have to claim it. Not cautiously, not half-heartedly, but with full conviction. With the awareness that your consciousness is the most advanced technology you will ever possess. When you wield it with clarity, with love, with alignment to your deepest truth, you don't just change your life, you change the probability field around you. You alter what's possible for everyone connected to you, because your frequency ripples outward, reorganizing the collective field itself. Now, let's move toward integration, toward embodiment. Awareness without action becomes another form of resistance. So tonight, or whenever this message finds you, I invite you into a simple yet powerful practice. Sit quietly and call forth the ghosts of your past, the versions of yourself that never materialized, the paths you walked away from, the dreams that dissolved. Speak to them with reverence. Tell them thank you. Recognize that every version of you has been a teacher, every detour a necessary redirection. As you do, feel how the energy that once felt like regret begins to shift into gratitude. This is alchemy, the transformation of frequency from contraction to expansion, from resistance to release, from separation to coherence. When you release the charge of judgment around your past, you reclaim the energy trapped in those memories. You liberate your life force to move freely again, and in that flow, the field around you begins to shimmer with possibility. Everything in your experience is frequency. Every thought, emotion, and perception is a vibration echoing through the quantum field. When you shift your vibration, the field shifts with you. And the miracle, the one you've been waiting for, was never something to reach for. It's the natural byproduct of coherence. It's what happens when consciousness stops collapsing into limitation and begins expanding into its own infinite nature. You are both the observer and the observed, the wave and the particle, the dreamer and the dream. And when you learn to hold both at once, when you stop forcing reality to fit into either divided by awe and start living in, and you enter the true space of creation, in that space, paradox becomes peace. Wholeness becomes your baseline. Miracles become ordinary. The field is always listening. And right now it's listening to you. So choose your signal wisely. Choose alignment over resistance, coherence over chaos, expansion over fear. Because in truth, both are always available, and the moment you stop trying to choose one over the other, you stop collapsing into limitation and begin living in dynamic, radiant wholeness. You are the tuning fork, the river, the wave. You are consciousness becoming aware of itself. You are the universe remembering its own design. And everything you've been seeking has been seeking you in return, waiting for this exact moment of coherence, this precise vibration of readiness to meet you halfway. Don't do it from a place of regret. Don't let your heart fall into the illusion that things should have been different. The moment you make your reflection about what could have been, you trap your power in the past. Instead, thank those moments. Express genuine gratitude for the roads you walked, the choices you made, and the experiences that sculpted your awareness. Thank the people who came and left, the opportunities that opened and closed, the chapters that completed themselves before you were ready. Each of them showed you what was possible. Each of them taught you something essential, what you needed to learn, what truly matters, what never did. And then, with love and respect, with full acknowledgement of their role in your story, release them, let them go. Give them permission to dissolve back into pure potential, to return to the quantum field where all possibilities live. In that release, in that clearing, you create space, room for new potentials to emerge. Room for the future that's trying to find you to finally break through, because you can't receive what's next while you're gripping what was. You can't step into your becoming while you're mourning your might have been. But let me give you something deeper, a practice that doesn't just help you release the past, but helps you embody the future. Because releasing the old is only half the equation. The real mastery comes in anchoring the new, and that's where most people get lost. They let go of what's familiar but don't know how to root into what's unfolding. They float in the liminal space between the old self and the emerging self, untethered, uncertain, suspended between identities. Here's what you do. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you let the outside world dictate your frequency, take just 3 minutes. Set a timer if you must. Sit in stillness. Close your eyes. And instead of visualizing what you want, which keeps your desire separate from you, locked in the future, drop into the feeling of already being the version of yourself who has it. Don't focus on the having, focus on the being. Having is external, it comes and goes. Being is internal, it's a frequency, a consciousness, a state. If you want abundance, don't picture numbers in your bank account. Feel the vibration of someone who knows they're always provided for. If you want love, don't imagine a specific person. Feel what it's like to be someone who knows, at their core, that they are worthy of extraordinary love. If you want success, don't chase outcomes or recognition. Embody the identity of someone who already knows their worth, independent of validation. Let that feeling sink into your body. Let it move through your cells. Let it reorganize your nervous system. Then open your eyes and walk through your day as that person. Make decisions from that vibration. Speak from that consciousness. Respond to challenges from that energy. Because the universe doesn't respond to what you want, it responds to what you are. When you become the vibration of your desire, when you embody it fully, reality has no choice but to reorganize around that frequency. This isn't manifestation as you've been taught. It's not about asking and waiting and hoping the universe delivers. This is quantum creation. This is consciousness participating in the collapse of the wave function. This is you choosing which timeline you inhabit, not through force or manipulation, but through alignment and embodiment. And here's the secret most people miss. When you practice this consistently, when you make it a rhythm instead of a one-time exercise, you're not merely changing your thoughts, you're rewiring your brain. You're shifting the patterns that govern your nervous system. You're altering the electromagnetic field your heart emits. Together, these changes create a coherent signal that the quantum field must respond to. Not in months, not someday, but now. You'll notice subtle shifts within days, synchronicities, small openings, moments of grace. The field responds instantly because coherence is immediate. Transformation isn't an event, it's a process, a continuous choosing. Every moment is an invitation to align with what's real instead of what you wish were real, to honor what is rather than fight for what isn't. Every time you make that choice, every time you surrender resistance and lean into acceptance, you shift your vibration. You become a different kind of magnet, and the universe, always responsive, begins mirroring that new coherence back to you. But I know what you might be thinking right now. That sounds beautiful, but my life is hard. My circumstances are overwhelming. How am I supposed to vibrate higher when everything around me feels like it's falling apart? I hear you. I see you. And this is crucial to understand. This practice is not about denying your pain or pretending struggle doesn't exist. It's about understanding that your external circumstances are lagging indicators. They're showing you the frequency you broadcasted yesterday, last week, last month. They are echoes, not definitions. Your current situation is not proof of limitation. It's the residue of old energy, old beliefs, old emotions that are dissolving. The mistake most people make is waiting for life to change before they allow themselves to shift internally. But that's like trying to change the reflection in a mirror without changing what's standing in front of it. Your power doesn't lie in your circumstances. It lies in your response to them. It lives in your capacity to hold a higher frequency, even when everything around you tempts you to collapse into fear or despair. And that doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you face it with coherence instead of chaos, with alignment instead of panic, with trust instead of terror. When you can do that, when you can meet difficulty without letting it dictate your vibration, the universe notices. The field registers that signal, and it responds. Not always in the way you expect, not always on your preferred timeline, but it does respond. Because by holding coherence in the face of chaos, you're demonstrating mastery. You're showing reality that you understand how creation actually works, that understanding unlocks doors that force could never open. Think about the caterpillar in the chrysalis. If you could see inside, it would look like destruction, complete dissolution. The body melts into a formless soup. Nothing of the old structure remains. If that caterpillar had human consciousness, it would probably believe it was dying. It would think everything had gone wrong. But that dissolution isn't death, it's transformation. The old form must dissolve completely before the new form can emerge. The same is true for you. The parts of your life dissolving right now, the identities that no longer fit, the relationships or dreams falling away, they are not evidence that you're failing. They're proof that you're evolving. Transformation always looks like destruction from the inside. So if you're in that phase right now, if everything feels uncertain and undefined, breathe. Stay present. Trust the intelligence of the process. Because what's forming in the darkness is something your current self cannot yet imagine. Something more aligned, more luminous, more whole. The chaos you're facing is the chrysalis, the sacred space where who you were dissolves, so who you're becoming can take shape. Before we close, I want to give you one more practice, something simple but powerful. This is how you anchor this transmission, how you make it real. Drop one word into your awareness right now, the word that captures the energy, the intention, the transformation you're choosing in this moment. Don't overthink it. Don't pick what sounds spiritual or profound. Choose the word that feels alive in you. Maybe it's trust. Maybe it's release. Maybe it's becoming. Speak that word out loud. Whisper it, write it down, claim it, because when you name something, you summon it. When you speak it in front of witnesses, even if those witnesses are unseen, you're not just thinking it, you're declaring it. You're imprinting that frequency into the field. And that declaration ripples outward in ways you can't predict, but will absolutely experience. Now imagine doing this again tomorrow morning, before the world sets your frequency for the day. Let it recalibrate you. Let it remind you of what you already know in your deepest self. And if someone comes to mind while reading this, someone who's struggling to forgive their own past or find direction, share this understanding with them. Not as casual advice, but as a transmission. Because when you give this awareness to another, you don't just help them, you reinforce it in yourself. You participate in the expansion of collective consciousness. That's how reality shifts, not through isolated effort, but through resonance. The more of us who embody this frequency, the more the collective field reorganizes to reflect it. We're not building a philosophy, we're cultivating coherence. A field where consciousness recognizes itself. A space where transformation isn't a rare event, but an inevitable unfolding. ChatGPT có thể mắc lỗi. Hãy kiểm tra các thông tin quan trọng.